Classical has a lot more to do with duality. Like there's a right way to do it and there's a wrong way to do it. And Tantra, they're like, it's kind of all good, right? It's all good. It's all Shiva. There's a million ways to do it, right? And it's a bit around transcending the system. Whereas in classical, it's the system. So we know we've been working with paradox for a very long time, right? For a very long time in terms of human consciousness. So what I wanted to just give us some space to talk about today is just like, what are some of the paradoxes that are arising and how do you want to navigate those? So I have for our topic, we can decide if this is what we want to do. And we can also just do whatever we want to do. Was this around like paradox, like primal? I've been asked on, when you're asked the same question like 3 times in the same month, and you're like, well, maybe this is just up. Maybe this is just up right now. So I've been asked a lot about the paradox between primal and AI. I restructured my team to be able to handle an AI economy, and it was intense, and in part of what we do in Future You, the part of like Future You, part of Club Thrive is we tune into our purpose, and as that is intersecting now. So Ata is the first word in the Yoga Sutra. And when I was studying the Vedic texts, it's like the order of things is really important in these classics that they had to have their wisdom stand the test of time, knowing that books would probably be destroyed. Books were palm leaves, right? Banana leaves, right? That things would be destroyed. So how do you make sure the wisdom stays? How do you make sure the wisdom can survive genocide? Something like that. Problems humans have had for a very, very, very long time. So even in like some of the analysis of how the Egyptian pyramids are structured is so that like some of the bigger answers to what we learned would stand the test of time and would be visible even from outer space. Like there's some like really interesting ways of looking at how do we preserve the wisdom. So one of the ways they did that in the Vedas in particular is through order, what they call krama. So there's karma, Carma, and then there's krama, Krama. And so krama is this idea that order matters, sequence matters. So the first word in sutras should in many ways summarize the sutras. Like the first word in a book should summarize the book. So in the Yoga Sutras, Ata, meaning now, it's saying that if you're not present now, like there's no yoga, it doesn't matter. And so the first sutra in the Yoga Sutras is Ata Yoga Asana. So it's like now we're doing this. So why I bring that up is like now we're living in an AI world, right? And we have these physiologies that evolved over the history of life, right? So that's old. That's deep time. As far as we know, we're looking at like 13.7 billion years to get to Ata, to get to now. So you guys kind of feel into the paradox, right? And there's so much right now, isn't there? It's like there's so much in many ways it can feel like too much. And in our Ayurveda, when there's too much, things break. So when there's just too much, it's really cool actually in the Ayurvedic texts around like how does Ayurveda work? They go into like the different causes of disease, and like one of within the causes of disease, there's 3 big ones. One is you forget what you know. Part of what you forget what you know brings us into primal, that the body instinctually knows, right? So there's that part of knowing, and then there's the part of like you learned something yesterday. You probably fucked something up yesterday. You're supposed to learn from that and not fuck that same thing up today. You probably did something really good for yourself yesterday You're supposed to remember that that worked for you yesterday and apply it to tomorrow. So that's all part of that. And that's called prajna parada, right? Just like, so failure of wisdom, failure of the intellect is you just decided not to do what you already know, right? Decided not to do what you already know. Okay, so that's number one. Number three is really easy in terms of like how we have disease or how we get out of balance, and that's just time, like just aging. Like aging happens. So the best you can adapt to aging, the better off you are. So that's number three. So the middle one, and this is where we get into that too much component, is the middle one is how you use your senses. And this is really where that too much piece comes in, because like there's so much right now, right? If you think of just even like 100 years ago or even 5 years ago, even like before YouTube got so good, right? Or before reels and shorts, like before little snippets of content that gave us dopamine hits, before we were all addicted to our phones, before there were screens everywhere as part of our life, right? We didn't take in many unnatural images. So what we were taking in through our senses was like the breeze on our skin and the sunrise and the sunset in our eyes, the feeling of walking right before motorized transport, right? Just this is what we were taking in through our senses. And that's changed. And so now there's a lot. I had this curiosity today. It was early in the morning. It was in that like Brahma Muhurta time, that time before it's like really awake yet. And I was going down I'm in Mexico right now. So I was going down to get a big jug of water at our gate where they drop off the big jugs of water. And as I was coming back, I was thinking about if I had taken in zero media and known like absolutely nothing of what was happening in the news in the world in the past decade, like would it have affected my life at all? Do you know what I mean? Like, would it matter? Like all this sort of thinking and talking I've done around things that I have no control over and no input over, like no ability to just turn that wheel on around. Like what would that have been like? I watched a 1 minute reel yesterday, this guy who just went offline for 7 weeks and he measured his recall, his memory, his ability to recall. And it was below, he was an adult male, maybe around somewhere between 50 and 60, and he was below the 50th percentile in recall. He just went completely off screens for 7 weeks and it jumped to 99 percentile of like ability to recall, or the top 1%. Okay, so the conversation that like we're teeing up here in terms of Primal Ayurveda today is like, what is this paradox between moving into an AI world, right? And primal. And the reason, again, I'm bringing it up is because I've been asked this 3 times in the past month. I've just been asked about like this paradox because I basically have spent the last year trying to figure out how to prepare my company for an AI marketplace. Right? Like who are the people I need in my team? How is this whole thing going to work? Right. So I've been very involved in both worlds, very involved in primal and very involved in this AI, moving into an AI economy or an AI marketplace. So part of what I wanted to talk about today is just the nature of paradox. Because if we can know that paradox has always existed, like part of the way that we see paradox in the Vedic texts is it really comes in the movement from post-classical into Tantra. Classical has a lot more to do with duality. Like there's a right way to do it and there's a wrong way to do it. And Tantra, they're like, it's kind of all good, right? It's all good. It's all Shiva. There's a million ways to do it, right? And it's a bit around transcending the system. Whereas in classical, it's the system. So we know we've been working with paradox for a very long time. right? For a very long time in terms of human consciousness. So what I wanted to just give us some space to talk about today is just like, what are some of the paradoxes that are arising, and how do you want to navigate those? Or how do we want to navigate those paradoxes? Another way of saying it is like, what's not working right now? Right? Just like the guy realizing like his memory wasn't working, or just like in the Vedic text, the three causes of disease that we talked about before, which is like not doing what I know how to do, not learning from yesterday, pragnya parada, right? Time, like not adjusting to time and seasonal change and time of life change. Like if we're not adjusting to time of life changes, we're gonna have problems. That's parinama. And then this one in the middle that's around the senses, and especially too much. Like what is in the too much category that's coming in through the senses that is not enabling you to have the experience you want to have in your body, or not helping you reach the goals that you're trying to reach next. That is my monologue. Do you guys like my monologues, or is it just kind of like, when will she stop talking? Probably both. All right, so now we can all unmute. I have my pad. I can share it, or I can just take notes as we talk and see where we go with paradox. What's coming up?
Sorry, can you just explain more? Like, I followed you, paradox, and then we start with what's not working right now, and then how do we identify the paradox from there?
I think one of the ways to see it is through too much. Like what feels like it's too much to me is an indicator of something not working. For example, if we just feel like there's not enough time in the day, right? The question is like, then what is there too much of in the day? Another way of seeing the paradox is like, the more we get into AI, often we'll need the primal habits more. And to me, this is also why, I mean, I'm a bit of a strange bird, right? Like, and not really by design. Like, I feel like I was very normal for a very long time, like very normal, like very fit in, like typical. And yet when I see what happened from the trajectory of just seeking wisdom, like my major differentiating factor was just seeking wisdom from an earlier age. And I know many of you have this as well, right? Where like you were looking for a level of truth that other people just really didn't seem to give a shit about, right? And so then if we look at this community, which has evolved out of the prior communities that again, same path, just different names. We've been doing the same damn thing for 20 some years, right? And we went to primal together, not through me having an idea of like, let's go primal. It wasn't like that. It just happened from this wisdom path. And it happened it happened now when we seem to need it the most to counter some of the too muchness of the screen, like the screens, the news, the drama that's completely outside of us. And do you guys see the paradox in this? Like there's things that we can't control. They're completely outside of us. And just to use a urine therapy metaphor, we're like literally pissing away that which brings us back to center. That to me is part of the paradox. So if we start to look for the paradoxes in our life, and also what is now too much, so in terms of like what is coming up now that you're just like, it's just too much of that, you can use that. You can use your frustration as an indicator that really is pointing you to future you. And as you do that, you can establish a new floor. And so like a lot of what we do in these future use sessions is like, what's the new floor? Because as you're evolving in your fractal, there's a new floor. So there's a new standard. And as you set the standard, you notice that which is below the standard, because you're like, I've dealt with that before. That doesn't work. That's prajna parada, right? But you're not failing to incorporate the intelligence. You're activating it. You're saying like, I know where that goes. I know where like, that doesn't work. That leads me in the wrong place. Right. And it's hard. So I just, sometimes people have this idea around like the better we get at strategy and goal setting, it gets easier. It's like, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. And no, it doesn't, because you become more capable of taking on bigger challenges that you haven't met in the past. And so the feeling of that, like, this is hard to set this new floor. This is hard to grow. That to me it's familiar. Right. And yet, because we're able to have more capacity and more agency, certain things do get like 10 times easier.
Wait, you're going a little fast. What's from frustration and then you set a new floor? What's
Yeah,
that step?
I'll draw it. And it's also, you guys can see it in the University U Canvas, but I'll keep us in. Okay. So we have paradox. Right. So we've got primal and we've got modern. And part of modern is AI. And none of us can affect that. Does that make sense? Like none of us can affect, and I'm not saying people can't affect it, but like none of us have the power to like change BlackRock's agenda. Do we agree? We all might be at the mercy of it. All right. So there's always paradox. So this, it's an old symbol, right? We know this isn't new. We know humans have been aware of paradox for a very long time. And so if we can see the paradoxes in our own life, we can see how much we might, need to swing the pendulum from one side to the other. So if we're really involved in the outer world, if we're really taking in a lot of sensory stimulation, we're on screens a lot, maybe we're messing around with AI a lot, maybe we're traveling a lot, getting on airplanes a lot, like any of that, that's modern, that's things that people haven't been doing forever. The more we're going to need to counterbalance that with primal habits, the more primal we're going to need to get. Are we good on that? Is everyone like, that checks out? So it also means, like, one of the ways that Claudia Welch, she used to say this when we were coaching healthier hormones together, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago. It's a long time ago. But she's like, the more complex your life is, the simpler your habits need to be. And the way that she would say it is like, the simpler your food needs to be, the simpler how you eat needs to be, the simpler when you eat needs to be. It's the same thing. Like, you can play with complexity if and only if you're willing to swing the other way. Otherwise, you'll go to too much. So the second thing we talked about was too much. And sometimes the way too much feels, wait, let me give this person better arms, is it can feel like there's like a weight on your shoulder. It can feel like there's not enough time. So the question, this is a clock. One of my tips for visual communication, if you draw something and people don't know what it is, you just write the word and then they're like, of course that's a clock. And this is weight. So I just wanted, because again, I've been asked this question a lot of like, how are, like, you're so into AI and you're so into primal, like that seems paradoxical. It's like, yes, it does. Because I'm willing to play in the modern world of complexity. I'm willing to grow. So another way of seeing this, we'll draw two more pictures that you guys have all most likely seen before. We'll go back to a picture. So in growth, this is another paradox, right? If you try to grow and you don't have the stamina, you'll regress. You'll get pushed back into a depth path. So if you just try to work like one side and just like grow, a lot of you see this in the exterior world, like where like it's usually used in the example of like the billionaire guy who doesn't have a good relationship with his wife or kids. Or the actually Japanese cultures has a lot of like the guys who something happens with the company, they've devoted their life to the company, and then they commit suicide because they can't face public, like they don't have the depth. So we see this when it's really out of whack. So if we can make this useful, it's like where in your life are things too much and not enough, right? There's like too much going on and there's not enough time. Do you see the paradox? Too much, not enough. And then the other question that we talk about in Future You is what's the new floor? This a way of saying it is like, what's the new standard that has the paradox, that has the right balance of the paradox? So for example, if you're going to, again, steer towards the complex, whether it's in food, whether it's in your, just like social life, whether it's in work, whether it's in relationship, like having a lot of different relationships, right? It's like, then you have to pulse the other way to the simple. Otherwise things break down and you never really establish the next floor of your growth. So this is like you growing, you taking on, here's the new floor is also, let's add some pictures and some color here. This can be your next purpose and bigger goals. That's your new floor. So certain things don't exist at the new floor. So certain habits, sometimes certain people, sometimes it's like you just look at certain apps on your phone, screen time, certain ways that you're using time in the day, like certain bedtimes. Do you see what I mean? Like certain things just don't exist at that new floor. And so sometimes what happens is like we try to reach the next goal, we're climbing the ladder, we're doing the thing, but then we keep finding that we keep like sliding back. Right? And we can regress. And so if we're regressing, then the question is, we have those three, again, back to the three causes of disease or three ways that things go wrong. Number one is we're not learning. Two is just too much. And too much is linked to senses. Three is we're not obeying time and rhythm. These are like, we can say they're the three causes of disease. But disease is just that which is against ease, right? So we can just put a hyphen in there and say, well, this is true, whether it's physical. It's not letting me put a hyphen in there. Let me try again. No, S and E are connected. Sorry. Okay. What is coming up as I did it again? Dis ease. Who's having an aha? Valerie, we'll go to you and then Alex.
I had a really interesting podcast interview yesterday, and one of the conclusions, I was talking to an artist and we were talking about community building, and we actually explored why it is that organic community no longer works. The safety that organic community used to offer isn't sacred anymore because people's attentions are too divided. Like, you can't go to the same grocery store and see the same people anymore. You can't go to the library and say, like, know everyone anymore. That just doesn't exist anymore. And so now it has become necessary for us mostly to create them more intentionally, but oftentimes also we need to create them in containers that require money, right? Or require other resources. And she had some blockages around money, and she was trying to like parse out like, well, when now does it happen that we don't need money for a community? And we couldn't come up with an answer. Because it's super hard to belong somewhere now. And once your attention is driven either by your phone or whatever else is going on, you remove yourself, and it's too easy to remove yourself. And it's too easy for other people to forget that you were there.
Right. So there's a way, and this might be true in certain cultures more than, like certain places in the world more than others.
Yeah.
But in general, we could say as a whole, we're going this way.
Yeah. And it has a lot to do with the too much in the senses, right? This is all about like dopamine. This is all about like us, like our attention is being stolen by devices. And it's created a different need. It's created a different system where we can no longer, the resources have to be allocated differently.
I think there's a way we could say, have you guys heard, do we have any Robert Breedlove fans in the house? Any Robert Breedlove? Robert Breedlove is one of the biggest advocates of value. And there's a book that I can't read. I can't seem to get through it. Maybe I will with my new team of engineers who are amazing. That'll have tons of time to be able to dive into it. It's called Leela. It's written by the same guy, Robert Pritzig, who wrote The Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, who's a bit of a philosopher. And it's a long novel that really explores what is value. So when Valerie's saying money, right? Money is it's a store of value. It's a medium of exchange. It's a number of things. But so is time, energy, and everything comes down to attention, or how you use your attention in time, which is like what you create. And so what Valerie's saying is over here is like this whole idea of like organic community doesn't really, like the organic community that happens right now, the way we image this, and we just had a branding meeting for Club Thrive, and it's like we image this as like everyone looking at their screens, like sitting in the same room and everyone's looking at different screens. Has anyone like seen this in their like life lately? My dad was visiting the other, last week, and at one point I walked into the kitchen, and it's not like I'm like guilty as charged as well. I walk in where everybody's sitting and everyone's looking at their screen, and I go, okay, 1, 2, 3, everyone look at your screens, right? And everyone like cracks up because That's what's happening, this isolation, right? Where we might be sitting together, but like this is kind of what we're all doing, rather than what you're saying is like over here connecting. And so there's a paradox. And the paradox is around how we value, and again, we can't really, who here just like, there's just no way that you could really go offline. I mean, I couldn't. This is what we do together here, right? So most of us are tied to exchanging value through screens, but then there's got to be this balance in how do we organize as a community around an intention. Or what do we do together? That's a good example, Valerie. Yeah. Yeah, Alex.
Yes. Well, actually, I feel I'm going to disappear for a while. I'll take like a week or 10 days to go and meditate in a cave. No electricity, no running water.
How do I
And
draw a
then-
cave? I think I can draw it like this.
And the funny thing is that I'm not overwhelmed with what's going on because I don't know. I mean, I didn't have a TV for over 20 years that I gave up, especially because when I was working in relief work, I was reading all the newspapers, watching TV, and I was so pissed. I was so irritated that actually that was what I was sharing, my own frustration. So I decided I would just fast from that. And that was the only thing when we bought this house, that I asked my wife, I mean, there's going to be no TV. And she said, fine, fair enough. But there's a Wi-Fi, which is even worse.
And better, because then I get to know you.
Because it means that, yeah, then TV comes to bed.
Right.
So even with my, let's say, luxurious kind of setup, I have too much, and I don't know if I have too much even of myself, that I would like now to be in silence and integrate a little bit what's happening in me.
Yeah.
I mean, besides AI or the world outside, I've got enough of myself. Sometimes I would just like to, yeah, give up from myself, from my thoughts, from my. I mean, I'm still trying to integrate what happens with my mouth. I still have problems with my mouth. By the way, I went to the dentist.
Yeah, what happened?
To another one. Well, it's crystal clear that I'm losing bone. Yeah, so that's why I lost so many teeth. And then, but then I don't know. I have to experiment a little bit. I'm already experimenting with H urine. See if this can make any change. And because I went to another dentist, so we have now a new image that I would try to use, let's say, in a year or so, and see if I can regrow my own bone.
Yeah.
There's a dentist from Denmark that she says that it's something like the health of your teeth is that if you bite your tongue instead of biting back, all this energy would,
Oh,
and I was so it makes me wonder how many times I bite my tongue.
yeah, the expression that we use in English sometimes, hold your tongue, like when you hold, do you guys know what he's saying? Like when there's that tension in the mouth from not speaking the truth.
Yeah. I think I should well start with myself, but also try to be extremely delicate in the sense of how I articulate my feelings, so that they're not, and see that would be very amazing if I could regrow bone. This is wishful thinking, I don't know. But that's something I'm gonna start at the cave now. Yeah.
Okay, a few things. One is sesame oil. So I would also use that 'cause high in calcium in terms of like just getting the oil pulling with organic, unrefined sesame oil because it'd be highest in the calcium, like absorbable calcium content. I know there's a bunch of Ayurveda people here. You guys can also put things in the chat or on mute. Second thing is I just want to tie this back. So we went through here the 3 causes of disease. This is, if you guys want the text source, this is in the Charaka Samhita, but I think it actually predates that. This one of time and rhythm is what Alex, that's what really strikes me. What Alex is talking about is he's at a time juncture where he's being pulled into the cave. So I'm guessing all of you know of elders or people in a phase of life, we'll say over 60, that there's no way they would even hear the call to the cave, right? They might miss it because of whatever's going on in their life. You guys know what I mean? But this is a stage. This is what they're talking about in Parinama, like when you blow off a stage change. So is anyone here familiar with Kaya Kalpa? I've talked about it in a few podcasts. So Kaya Kalpa, this is the answer to, this is a very strong answer to the cause of disease caused by Parinam, where you go, let me give us some context here. Okay, so now this is the cave. I have a podcast on it. It's a practice. It's a very mysterious practice in Ayurveda. In a lot of my interviews, I've tried to find experts in this. It's there's an interview with Dr. Brian Miller, who is married to Light Miller, those of you who know of her books in Ayurveda. She's since passed. Okay. Who else have I talked to about it? It'll probably come to me in the next day or two, some somewhat random conversations. A lot of this really esoteric wisdom in Ayurveda, this is really primal, right? So again, swing of the pendulum to primal is you go underground for 6 months. And this is where they say you regrow hair and nails. Your hair goes from white to dark again, regrowing teeth. And it's this practice of Kaya Kalpa. So that call that Alex has into the cave with the stuff going in with teeth. Can you guys hear how primal this is? And that's how primal works. It's instinctual. So the level of instinct at the level of this is like what we're learning from our primate self. That's something in the human being, the history of the human being has known this for a long time. It's a primal, it's an ancient practice. What do you need? It's like you go underground and they're in a pretty minimal diet. There's no light. And just think about that. There's no new images coming into the senses. There's no differentiation between day and night. Right? When you're in the dark, it's just dark. There's no sunlight. It seems totally freaking nuts. It is totally nuts. And now there's a resurgence. Does anyone have friends that have done or has anyone here done a retreat, like these darkness retreats? I can't remember what they're called. Has anyone heard of them? I've got Kavita there. I know there's some in Oregon. And it's the same thing. You go into a cave, you don't see light for days, your friends bring you food. You can organize this as like a retreat type thing. And people do it. And it's like deep, deep, deep sensory deprivation. Right? So then we're depriving the sense organs of what? Too much. Right? And so then we're not taking in anything. We're depriving our sense organs also of time. Because we're no longer in diurnal. We've now transcended the paradox of diurnal, nocturnal. And in that, at least according to the ancient primals, right? Like that's where the deepest regeneration, regrowth happens. Huh, Alex, to be continued, huh? Yeah, Kavita and then Mahite.
Yeah, that one's pretty mind-blowing. You're going in the cave to regrow your teeth. I appreciate that one. Yeah, paradox here. Going back to the screens. I had a session with 8 of my people last night, and a lot of people are dealing with layoffs, either their own or spouses, and things are like, wow. So I had I had the plan kind of what I was going to do with our time and plan out the window, because I could really feel that even though, the paradox, here we are on our screens, in a connection, which is, everybody lives in different places. And yet what was needed was that connection. What was needed was this deep organic connection through this completely non-organic, organized way, and how to hold space in that time in the most organic way. I mean, and that's kind of the paradox that I'm facing, is how to be really organic in a moment-to-moment basis with folks who are showing up in an overstressed and completely uncertain and very, very scared state, some of them, and how to acknowledge, here we are, let's drop in, this is like this beautiful island that we're creating together right now. Even though at one point, I sang the Jetsons song, because okay, yeah, let's acknowledge we're talking boxes, and everybody was laughing. The people who could sing the Jetsons song with me did, but
George Jetson.
right? So yeah, so we went there. So there was some humor. And then also, there was a guy who right before he got on the call had a phone call that said, maybe his job is going away. So it's like this paradox of, but everybody still wants to be there. And what we do together, we know affects not just us, but everything. So we're there and we're invested, and yet, right, there's a ton of paradox just all over it. So yeah, moment to moment, reevaluation, updating, distilling, throwing out what, like at the beginning of the meeting, I thought I was going to do, because nobody wants to do right now. People just wanted to be at that time. So, really just like kind of being ready to roll with what needs to be happening in each moment.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's the more afraid, right? So, and this will come up in parenting, this will come up in assisting death, like, right? So full range. is fear, when we're in a stage where there's fear, where the unknowns are greater than the knowns, right? To have, if that's what's going around on with the people around us. So what I'm hearing in Kavita's experience is like, that's what's going on in her group. It's going on in the people around her, is the more people are in fear or in pain leads to fear, right? So pain and fear are very linked. So say you have a child that like falls off the monkey bars or whatnot, and they're in pain and they're in fear, the more grounded and available you need to be. So you don't need to do something, you just need to be, right? So that they can orient back into groundedness. It's the same thing's true when like an enormous amount of the public sector will lose its job, as there's a swing of the pendulum from the pushing the public sector back into the private sector. Nothing anyone here can affect. It's happening, right? It's global. We just picked up someone on our team who just lost her job from the public sector, and she's coming into the private sector, right? Just by N=1, just this week. Like, it's happening, it's global. It's not just happening in your neighborhood, it's happening, right? So as that happens, as people that are losing that public sector identity, connected to an identity, this is how I offer value in community, or how I exchange value in the marketplace for work. As it happens, and they lose identity, when people lose identity, most people go into fear. And most people experience pain from that identity, and it feels like the identity is stolen from them. So you'll see this in stories, you'll see this in shares. It feels like their identity is stolen from them, right? And so if you're in that environment with people that are in that unknown, in that uncertainty, and have that loss of identity and have the pain due to loss of identity, what Kavita just described is like, you don't need to fix anything. You don't need to do anything. It's just being able to be, it's almost like a sponge, right? Be able to be in a sponge where you're available to somebody who's in the unknown, who's in the depth path, who's something's dying, something's not fun right now. And just by being that, something changes for them. It's the craziest thing. Total, yeah, it's such a great example of the paradox. Because often, right, we're thinking like, I need to fix this for them, or I want to be able to fix this for them, but you can't. You can just it's like the person dying, you can't fix it, you can just be there. Or the child that's in pain, you can't really sometimes take it away with a lollipop, right? Sometimes you don't want to take it away with a lollipop. It's like you just being there.
One thing, can I say one more thing? One
Yeah.
thing that was cool that came out of it, because it was Mahashivaratri, we were doing, chanting to Shiva, which is totally appropriate. And someone had a story about, I'm not remembering who told her the story about the Mahamrityunjaya mantra, where you're talking about, may I be like the squash that falls from the vine as just when it's totally ripe. And she was talking about, yeah, and then you eat the squash, and then you poop out the seeds. And like, let's take this further. Like, when things are composting, we have fertile ground, and where are we planting our seeds? Right. So that was like this really beautiful metaphor that came through.
In the compost, right? It's like, it's already in the compost. The seed's already in the compost. Yeah. And that's the and I think it's the more we all kind of sink into this. I know today is like, sometimes, we're just really practical. Right now, we're more philosophical. We're just sort of noticing, and you'll notice more. One thing I know from, doing this for decades, right, is it's like our conversations, relationship is basically conversations. So you don't have relationships outside of conversations, even the nonverbal conversations. So if what we see our relationships are is our relationships are conversations. And some of these conversations involve more words, some of them involve touch, some of them like are highly nuanced in so many ways. Some of them are telepathic. Oh my gosh, Joe Rogan just had someone on telepathy on. Did anyone hear that conversation? Yeah, super interesting. New data on telepathy. Like, what do we know about telepathy? We've always been doing it, right? So it's like, George Jetson, right? On one level, like we need these little devices to communicate and zoom around. And then on another level, like we just have always had the capacity. So, So what'll happen is this conversation will reverberate and you'll notice, like Molly might notice, like this is now too much. This is now showing up on my too much list. This is showing up because it's below my new floor. Right? This person, this thing, this task is below my new floor. Now, does it need to be done by somebody? If so, who? Does it need to not be done? Is that just expired? And I was just redoing an old pattern. All right. For some of us, that's like a meal. Like we just don't. Okay, I'm going to use one more example and then Mahite, I'll come to you. I was talking to my friend Manuel. Those of you who've come to the Mexico retreat before, he was the waiter. He had a big belly, really short hair, built like a rock. He no longer has a big belly. I'm like, Manuel, what's your secret? He's like, what do you mean? I'm like, you know exactly what I mean. He's down 40 pounds since I saw him. Like it's a pretty short period of time, maybe 6 months. He's down 40 pounds. He looks great. He looks healthy. And he said, no cena, no dinner. Right. It's like oldest trick in the book in Ayurveda. Just as you get older, stop eating dinner. Right. Prioritize digestion towards early in the day. So sometimes like the new floor, it's like there's something that you were doing that it just doesn't need to be done. Right? It's not an efforting thing. It's a non-efforting thing. I find so much with parenting with Indy right now, it's just presence. That's it. That's my only strategy. It's just 100% presence while she's still home. Few words, mostly just being in the space, being in the conversation that doesn't need words. Okay, Mahite.
One of the paradox that I wanted to share was like, for me, the more there's too muchness, intense too muchness, and the world goes crazy, the more I feel I need not only primal, but I need art. I need beauty. I need to create, I need to make sense of it. For me, it's through writing that it helps me to, I don't know. I don't know what it does. I cannot make sense of it, but I need that. And then as the pendulum, like the more the more I read novels and poetry, and the more I tune into that like amazing magic, the more I'm drawn to go back to the world and see and witness and presence and see the craziness of it all, which is Shiva Shakti, which is like beauty and horror. And it's just, so there's a constant swing. I'm pulled into like, I wouldn't give up the news. I don't eat much. I don't consume much news, but I wouldn't cut myself completely from this, what's happening right now, just because it's so rich. It is so insane. It is so
Totally
crazy.
wild.
Like, you're like, can you imagine the beauty we can create out of that? Can you imagine the presence and the magic we can make with that in art? So yeah, I am, but it is taxing for my little nervous system.
Hmm. So it sounds like you're finding is there a line there that it's not too much?
It has to be, my bar is super low. It's my greatest
Yeah,
despair. Like, I cannot handle much in anything. I cannot handle much. So
yeah,
I would need to, I don't know. I don't know. Haven't, like, clearly, as you know, I haven't found yet where is
yeah.
the bar. But I guess there's a level, yeah. But I really need a lot of slow down rhythmic time to integrate, to see, to process, to witness, and offer back. But that's shit, man. Modern life is so quick. I feel crushed. Like, it's crushing us.
Yeah. I would I would look at
She froze again, or?
I think she did freeze again.
I'm having,
Oh, there she
am
is.
I back? Okay, now I'm back. You guys can see my screen and I'm back. Okay. So with the new floor, and you guys, the thing about the new floor, it has the 80-20 rule, which means which means evolutions are dramatic. To me, that's what 80-20 means, is it's like there's a it can take a really long time. I know, like Valerie, your post on the WPA forum of like, it's a new club, right? That club and you, like that's a new floor. And everything we've done before has been helpful to get to where we are now. This is often confusing to people. And sometimes it can feel like a lot of like, why does it have to be so hard? Or like, why did I have to go through all that? Right. But it's like the going through all that gets us to all of those micro learnings, all of those macro learnings, all of the processes of identity evolution that happen in that process, that establishes the new floor. And so again, this is a map, this is a pattern, this is a way of processing. So when we see of like what we let go of, all of that got you there in the first place. So pranam, bow, right? We bow to the history, we bow to the past, bow to the ancestors, bow to the past self, bow to the past identities, all that. So for Mahite, what I'm hearing is like your new floor needs to be like, is it nourishing? So is what you're taking in as news nourishing? It reminds me of two things. One, I lived with in a community house when I was in Ayurveda school, when I was in Grass Valley, Nevada City area. And my roommate had a magazine. He subscribed to a magazine called Yes Magazine. It was like yes, exclamation point. I'm not sure if it was Canadian or American, but it was like really a cool take on like only taking in, it was news, but it was in the positive. So that's one. Two, for me, like I will not watch something if I'm not inspired by the characters. So if whether it's like fiction or nonfiction, if I'm like, this person's not inspiring me, it's just a no. It's just a swipe. It's just a scroll. It's just that I'm not going to watch this movie. I'm not going to watch the series because I'm not inspired by any of the characters. It's garbage for me. It's in the 80%. Now, the other thing about the 80-20 rule is that 20% is 1 out of 5. Right? It's like the B plus through the A cat or the B through the A category. It's the best. It's the cream. It's the cream of the crop. And it's saying that the majority of what you'll all run into on an everyday basis will be a no. That'll be the 80%. And so there's not a settling, right, in a growth path like this. Like there's not a settling in a evolutionary path or in an enlightenment path or whatever you want to call you as the seeker of your next fortune as
Yeah, but your
applied to
job,
your own
like,
definition.
what do you do with that? Like with the job we have to do, like most of my brain power is consumed at my day's work. When I come home, I'm like trashed.
Right. And so that's where I would apply, because sometimes when you're in it, it's hard to get outside of saying like, what is the target? Because most of us put the how before the what. So if we say that I don't know how to get to this target, this is what I want. I want this type of work. For me, I mean, Lynn and I will do a podcast on what she has seen happen in the last, I don't know, what's the time frame, Lynn? Should we just say like 12 weeks?
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to get through as many iterations as possible, like the hardest to learn lessons that I need to learn as fast as possible, because it's not like, this isn't really the path of the arrow in real life, is it? Like the path of the arrow is like this. And so you're just bouncing, and these are the lessons learned. And they go into the next test. So think big, that's this. what? This is your think big. These fluctuations, these are test small. The word for iteration in Sanskrit is abhyasa. It means practice. So practice is not repetition. It's iteration. Does that make sense? Does that fit? Am I using these words like where it's like you're doing the next iteration, but it's not exactly the same as the past because of the lesson learned. And if you think it's going to be easy, you're just like I hope, but it's often not, right? I hope it's easy. That would be nice, but it's often not easy. It's just growth. It's just more iterations, more small tests of how do I get closer. So if what it is, Mahite, is like work that doesn't leave you exhausted by the end of the day, if it's less hours and more money, then that's part of the what? Then that's that new floor. So then everything we do in future use strategy, not everything, but a chunk of future use strategy is towards that what. And then all of this is the how. How. And sometimes these cycles of floors, like these cycles of growth, I think this is one of the bigger questions that I have, is sometimes these take years to get to the new floor. And we want it to happen in months, or we want it to happen in 1 year. But some of the lessons that we have to learn, like literally just take years. And then all of a sudden you're on the new floor and you're like, that happened so slowly and really fast. Because you were like so stuck. And yet it was that next iteration that popped you out the other side. I was listening to Bill Burr. Any Bill Burr fans? Is that just me being from the Boston area that I absolutely love Bill Burr? I think he's a hilarious comedian. He'll say anything. Okay. He was talking about like the Truman Show and like poking through the roof, like trying to find the roof on certain things where like all of a sudden you're out of the matrix. That's very much how it can feel, where you're just like, you're still 100% in it until you pop through it and then you're on the other side. I feel like Kavita for you with WPA, it's like a little bit easier for you because you'd already had so many iterations under your belt that you're like, oh, now I just get to apply this there. And it's like pops you through a bit to the other side where a bunch of the parts of the business model line up with what you already had learned. You're able to actualize that faster than someone who hadn't done a lot of those iterations in the past. So we look at that person and like, they're lucky, it's easy for them. And it's like, no, it's not. They just had already done more reps. Reps, I keep using that word and it's like kind of reps, it's iterations, they're sort of different. Because it's, the reason they're different is novelty. You're trying something new. You're doing a slight tweak. Sometimes people call it like sometimes we need like a 50-degree change, 180-degree change. Sometimes we need a 3-degree tweak. And sometimes it's that 3-degree tweak that finally it's that just enough novelty, just a much adjustment. And all of those things had built up. And then you have that breakthrough to the new floor. That said, once you're at the new floor, right? Usually you slide under it, right? And you're just like, what happened? I was up here. And then you're just like, what the fuck? I hate it down here. Like I know how to get back up. So you get right back up. And then this floor gets more solid from the process of learning I'm below the floor. This is what above the floor feels like. And for many of you, that's the nervous system. So Mahite, what we want is you to calibrate your nervous system on the new floor. And the question to me is like, is this nourishing? Am I being nourished by the news? If I'm not in that yes exclamation point magazine variation of the news. I'm not being inspired or taking in what my nervous system needs for what? For you to hit what you actually, you guys, and this is the whole idea of Club Thrive and Club Hero, is that you have control over your own goals. You don't have control over whether or not Elon builds spaceships, right? Or whether or not the public sector gets moved into the private sector, right? There's this massive recalibration of the public sector happening. It'll happen globally, right? It'll happen in Canada. You guys, I was at the hot tub last night and they're like, who's the Elon of Canada? Who's that going to be? Because now that we see how it's done, like we need that. We need some of that too. We need some of our tax dollars to actually work for us as citizens. Whether we think this is good, bad, we don't have control over it. What we have control over is what is our target, right? And that's what we run those how iterations to. Okay, Mahite, can we make an agreement that your new floor is what is nourishing?
You mean in whatever I do, I ask myself, is that nourishing? Yeah. Yeah, that I can make. I'm not sure what's my target. Like the target seems like, is it to finish my book? Is it a job where is it less hour, more money? I'm confused, but at least for the nourishing part,
Well,
I agree.
if you're confused by because you don't know how, but you know what you want, right? So you go into desire, you allow yourself to know what you want. This is the same thing, like Alex, release your jaw right now, release your jaw. You're holding it. Yeah. And you just let your chin go. Yeah. You cannot do that and have a hard jaw. And we have to learn this. Those of us who hold tension, some of you hold it in your eyes, some of you hold it in your jaw, some of you hold it in your legs being crossed, right? We all hold unnecessary tension in a million ways. So as we start to release that, that's Alex's new floor, is he doesn't hold his jaw. He lets his emotions flow. Mahite's new is like, you feel your desire, you feel it. You say, I want more money and less time. Fine. Now we have strategy. Now we do future use strategy. We know what the what is. It feels impossible because we don't know how, but at least we figured out the what.
Like the confusion is like, well, I want money in last time just because I have more time to write. So first I went for the goal to write and I tried to bypass straight there. It's a hard path. I'm really exhausted.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm confused. I'm not sure what's the goal.
So those are some of those iterations, right? So then there has to be a possibility. And for some of us, we have to believe in a world. We have to believe in a universe. We don't like the word world. We have to believe in a universe where what we want is supported by that universe. For some of us on an energetic level, that is work. Just like it's work if you unconsciously hold jaw tension, it is so much work to let it go. You have to remember 10,000 times a day. Like literally, because all of a sudden it'll be, my lips are together. Oh wait, my jaw. Oh, how did that happen? I didn't even do it. So Mahite's new floor is allowing desire to come before the how, allowing the what before the how. And those iterations that you did in the beginning, you guys, this is what I mean. Like it can seem like a ton of wasted energy because it is. It's completely inefficient. Those first iterations are very inefficient. Like a baby learning to walk, it is like so inefficient. Watching toddlers, you're just like, wow, how to cross a room. Watching an old person, how to cross the room, right? Who's using fewer calories? Like the old person, there's no wasted effort. It's absolutely amazing to see, right? Like just like no wasted effort because they're in here. So all that you got from that original how that's frustrating as fuck, you guys did. And Lynn has a really great video on how learning is frustrating as fuck and your frustration tolerance is more or less determinant of whether or not you're going to hit your goal. So if you're really super frustrated, like perfect, that means you've tried some things. You've got some iterations under your belt, which means you can capture the lessons learned for the next small test, which means you're that much closer. And you guys, this is what I mean, is it doesn't, when we set bigger goals for ourselves, even though we've maybe set bigger goals and reached them in the past, as you have all done, as I have done, it doesn't feel better. We just have more frustration tolerant. We just know that like, oh, frustration is a sign that I'm actually have set the right goal. I'm on the right track. Like there's something that is worthwhile here. I'm growing in really painful ways. And that's why in club, like the whole club model is like, it's way easier to do this together. Because if you're alone, you give up. If you're alone, you give up, you get stuck, things stop. Okay, Lynn.
Yeah, to add on to this conversation, so I can relate to the whole feeling exhausted. And then in the chat, we were sharing, and Nicole also too. And so it sounds like the reason, from my experience of me feeling exhausted, is because I was over delivering. And silly me, I just learned this after working over 20 years in industry. And you know, the exhaustion was really more like over the last, let's say, 8 years or so, when I was trying to prove myself to people that weren't looking. But anyway, so would this be visually, like in the how and the up and down arrow, not arrow, in the up and down waves? It's like
Yeah.
I'm trying to go up in micro steps as opposed to just going through it like normal people. Like that's the doing it too much, like trying to make sure every
Yeah. It reminds me of how that goes to depth, right? When we're in the exterior, this is where the over efforting, because I mean, I would love for Leah to teach this or share whatever she wants to share on this, is like here in this path, there's like, this is surrender. So we even have to surrender to even feel what we want. Like to feel desire, we have to surrender. So that it's like if we're over efforting, what happens is, so in Ayurveda, or actually I don't even know, I think this is yoga, not Ayurveda language, although it's a huge concept that's completely underutilized in Ayurveda by most practitioners, is it's called spanda, and spanda is the pulsation. Spanda is the inhale, the exhale. If you go too far in the growth path, you'll get bounced into the depth path. That was my example of like the Japanese business guy who put all his effort into the company, and then he has no life and the company fails, so he jumps off the building. It's kind of an extreme example of going into death and dying, because here you have like the death of identity, you can literally die. So yeah, I think in your comment to Mahite in the chat, it's like, yeah, it's like trying to find where am I over efforting, or like my body, and not to just talk about fasting, but my body, he's like just no sena. Just an example of like where a bunch of effort was going to eating and digesting. And that's just an example in the mouth, but it can be anywhere in life. Like, where am I taking in that, which is now I just don't need that. I just need more of just this is being, this is doing.
And so that seems like that's the entry into the depth path, asking, am I over efforting? Is this why? And what does over efforting look like? And then you just start to going into like, oh, is it because I'm people pleasing, or is it because of whatever assumptions that there might be? And then it goes to that identity, I don't know, evaluation.
Yeah. Or the next floor, right? Then there's a new floor where it's like, oh, I can 80-20 my effort.
But you have to actually step out of that whirlwind to see what that 20 could be, or just that be an experiment of like, okay, are people going to notice?
And that's where the whole thing gets into, if we just have one more picture, and you guys have this in that, it's in the onboarding now in Club Thrive, of like, you start to see, you see the fractals. Right. And so this is like fractal you. Right. And it's unique to you. And so I think when Lynn's saying like you get out of it, you see the fractal of your life, you see the fractal of your pattern. And it just, like something clicks, something crystallizes, and then it's easier because then you're like, oh, I'm in the pattern, I'm in the matrix, but I can see it. And I know the patterns of the past will be patterns in the future. And there's also, it goes ancestral. So last week with my dad, do you guys ever have these conversations where like you just really lean in, like you really lean in, it's really not fun, it's really fucking frustrating, but you're like, well, I might as well see what's on the other side. Bill Burr, might as well pop the tent, right? I might as well keep poking and seeing what's on the other side. So I'm with my dad, and my dad and I have been having the same conversation my whole life. I'm 52. Am I 52? I don't know how old I am. I think I'm 52. I might be. My birthday's in a couple of weeks. I'll have to figure it out. I'm in my early 50s. I lost track. 1973. And he has a reflex. And this reflex drives me fucking nuts. And it's the skeptic. And if I hadn't studied voice dialogue in some of the work of Sid and Hal Stone, I wouldn't have known it. I wouldn't have been able to label it, like put the label on, like, oh, he's playing the voice of the skeptic, and there's a use for the skeptic. Skeptics, it's really important to have a well-developed skeptic, but you don't want to have a reflex as a skeptic because it creates a ton of limitation. It doesn't allow for wisdom. If you're always in the skeptic, you're never really in the wise person. There's a time and place for the skeptic and the wise person, but it's pretty small. We'll give it less than 10%. So if you're in 100% in that reflex, it limits all of your relationships. It creates a lot of isolation in relationship. And then it comes from the rational mind. Some people say it started with Descartes, right? It started with I think, therefore I am. It started with that level of association with who the who is. It's driving me nuts because I've been doing this massive iterations, hard. And he's like, he has the, well, we'll see where it's going. And I'm like, no. And the reason is I have a track record. I can see my fractal. So your skeptic has no power over my fractal. Of course, we didn't use that language, but I'm using that with you guys, right? And so we go there and we're at dinner, and there's this thing that I want to celebrate because like I actually had progression, right? I got from here to here, and I wanted to celebrate that. And he didn't want to because he's like, it's premature. And I'm like, no, it's not. Based on all of these other metrics, it's not. And he couldn't give up the skeptic. And so it created this really intense, really uncomfortable situation. And my husband and my child are both super confident. They're super like, they're completely confrontation averse. Right. And me and my dad are not. Like, we're totally fine with confrontation. We're fine with debate and all that. So it created this like intensity, and it sat bad with him after. It really didn't sit well with him. So I'm like, okay, this is good. I know it's stewing. The Agni, the fire is working. Something is churning. Something is happening. So he brought it up the next day, and he wanted to resolve it before getting back on the airplane. And you guys, like the stuff is working in your life with identity evolution. When there's intensity that's directional towards change. Can't sometimes not tell if it's good or bad in the moment, but it's directional towards change. And I'm just presence. I'm atop. I'm leaning in. And then it hits me. Like, it's like the ton of bricks kind of hits you. And I'm like, your parents never said they were proud of you, did they? No. And then like stories, like a few, like things just came out of them, like bam, bam, bam. We're like, we're driving in the car now. Like we're literally almost to the airport, right? We're like, so there's this timing. It's like the movies when this happens, right? And you can just see the physiological change. And so then when he said goodbye to me, he's like, I'm your biggest fan. And I was like, you've never said that before. So now what happens, this is Sponda. So now what happens, right, is I can organize my whole family, and he's going to pass. Like, he's in his high 80s, he's had cancer 4 times. He's not particularly strong right now, right? Like, who knows? Could be, he could have a decade, he could have 2 months, like, who knows, right? But I can organize everyone in his life that he has pushed away through his asshole like skepticism, because it really is, it's horrible. And I can have everyone, and we'll be together again in 2 weeks as an extended family, tell them how proud they are of him. Right. And then it's like, puncture the ceiling, we're at a new floor. And that's usually how it works. And then once you're there, it's like you'll see this pattern a million miles away, you know, and a bunch of other people will usually process that pattern through you once you're at that new floor, because now you're just available for consciousness to evolve. At least that's what I found. That's why healers often are like, I solved this problem for this person, and then like 10 more people that same problem showed up, and it's like, yep. Okay, does that make sense? New floor, abhyasa, leaning in, not being skeptical on your process even when you're frustrated as fuck. We'll make the frustrated as fuck tip sheet soon. Okay, closing thoughts.
I needed the tip sheet last year, Kate.
You can help me make it. We can just normalize this on the forum. So it's okay to talk about where you're deeply frustrated, or what's falling apart, or where you're puncturing through, and all that.